Alrighty, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started here today. Thanks for joining us here at MODEX. Hope everybody's having a good start off to their show this week. My name is Jackson Phillips. I'm an account manager at Matrix Design Group, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Alliance Resource Partners. My sole focus within the company is on pedestrian detection technology and then the enterprises that choose to implement them. And then looking at today's conversation, we're going to be focused on what does it really take to move collision avoidance from interest and fascination to successful enterprise execution. And when you look at that, in a lot of organizations, the question is no longer whether the technology works, right? But what we're looking at is how do you scale the building of internal alignment while continuing to jump through the hoops that finance, IT, procurement, and then all of your different production operations pose. And then how do you take that and actually deploy the technology like this across things like mixed fleets, multiple facility environments, and then while still working to complement the existing safety programs that you have in place. So when you lay all of these items out, it's apparent that enterprise organizations face a bigger decision than just head-to-head technology comparison at the end of the day. And what companies are now forced to evaluate is whether a provider has the roadmap and the resources to support product and service over an extended period of time. So with that, today I'm blessed to be joined by two safety leaders who have worked through these realities firsthand. We've got Kirk Mahan from Georgia Pacific and Jeremy Summers from Owens Corning. And our goal is going to be to talk openly about what does it take to move the product or technology like this from initial evaluation to full-scale execution. And then we kind of want to reveal to you guys what was harder than expected and what others can kind of learn from that process that we've been through on the way. So we'll start with a little bit of a guided conversation, and then we'll leave some time here at the end for Q&A. But with that, Kirk and Jeremy, maybe we start with a quick introduction, role, your scope, and then how does this fit into your broader safety strategy?
Thanks, Jackson. I'm Kirk Mahan, as Jackson mentioned. I'm with Georgia Pacific. I'm in our Safety Support Center and have been there for about 27 years, all of it in a corporate safety role. I've been in the safety industry for about 35 and a couple of years in engineering before that. For about the last 12 or 13 years or so, I've had a lot of responsibility for our mobile equipment and pedestrian interaction hazards at Georgia Pacific. And the way that that really fits into our overall strategy is around 2013 or so about 13 years ago, we did a really deep dive into our statistics on what was leading to most of our serious injuries and fatalities. And like many manufacturers, we found that there were 5 critical hazards leading to the majority of those SIFs, those serious injuries and fatalities. And one of them was struck by mobile equipment and pedestrian interaction. We fondly refer to that as moped. So if I slip up and say moped, that's what I'm talking about. But one of those hazards, as I said, was moped. And so just thinking about our current day statistics and how that fits in, about 20%, 21% of all of our incidents out of those critical hazards are still mobile equipment based, but about 33 to 34% of our fatalities are in that space still. So even though the overall number of events that are occurring are not that often, really prior to the technology that we'll be talking about today, it still led to a lot of fatalities. There just was no recovery from those interactions. So just in a nutshell, maybe that's how it fits in with our strategy, Jackson.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Kirk. Jeremy, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jeremy Summers. I'm the strategy and growth leader for the enterprise safety team at Owens Corning. It's a very fancy way of saying that I care a lot about the safety of every employee that we have. A lot of what my team focuses on is how to be able to continue to introduce new technology as our business continues to be able to grow and innovate. It means I've got great job security with OC. And also what I think is important with this technology is this fits right inside my team's wheelhouse. Just as Kirk said, we're also very focused on the incidents that we have with the interactions between pedestrians and mobile equipment, this issue seems to be bubbling up. It's not something that's going away. And so we are looking to be able to introduce better engineering controls to be able to prevent these incidents from happening again.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys both for taking the time to share your insights with us today, and we'll kind of hop right into it. Want to start here by focusing on why this became an enterprise issue, Kirk. So I'll start with you and ask, why did this issue rise to the enterprise level in Georgia Pacific, and what kind of made it more than just a site level safety concern?
Yeah, absolutely, Jackson. And I kind of teed that up with my introduction in that 20% incidents, 34% fatality. And so when you're looking at that number of fatalities in a manufacturing environment, the things that we started off with, I said I'd been doing mobile equipment and pedestrian safety for 12 or 13 years now. We started off initially looking at ways to physically separate pedestrians and mobile equipment. So things like barriers, improved layout in facilities, and so forth. And then we started looking into technology to look for ways that we could fail safely. That even though the barriers or the improved layouts were great, there were still opportunities for someone to either not know where they were supposed to be or just end up in the same space as mobile equipment. And of course, the pedestrian typically does not fare well in that situation. So we started looking at technology, and the technology that was widely available initially, this is years ago, 10 years or so, was primarily wearable technology. And there were a lot of issues with wearable technology, just like all of you can imagine. You have to wear it. Number one, you got to keep it charged, have to set the zones up right. You have to have the right technology, whether it's electromagnetic or RFID or GPS or what have you. So there were a lot of concerns with that technology. And then that was the first time, probably 10 to 11 years ago, that we were introduced to camera systems, to AI camera systems specifically. And it still did not really control the truck speed at that time. It really was more of an alerting device. And we really didn't feel comfortable with a passive system like that. We wanted to move to something that was more effective. And we are very big believers and practicers of human and organizational performance, HOP. Some of you may have heard of those concepts before. And so one of the big things there is you want to build capacity to fail safely. And if you think specifically about prevention controls and recovery controls, the prevention controls are those barriers and improved layouts. But you still have pedestrians and mobile equipment end up in the same space. So how do you recover from that? How do you have an active technology that actually can help you not contact that pedestrian when they are in the same space? So we were looking for a technology that was platform-based, something equipment-based that didn't rely on a wearable. We were looking at something that could be manufacturer agnostic. It did not have to come from any particular manufacturer, because being a large company as we are, we've got probably one of every kind of truck there is out there. We've got different fuel systems. We've got propane, diesel, electric, what have you. We've got some really old equipment, and all of you who've tried to buy a truck in the last 5 years, it's eased quite a bit recently, but I believe we're just now starting to take delivery of like our 2024 orders of trucks. So you're still having to drag out those older pieces of equipment. So we needed something that could meet all of those criteria and still effectively recover when those pedestrians and pieces of mobile equipment ended up in that same space. So this really became a key part of that critical hazard risk reduction.
Thank you, Kirk. And then, Jeremy, I'll pose kind of the same question to you, but add a little more depth to it. Why did this issue rise to the enterprise level in Owens Corning? And then on top of that, did this feel more like a safety initiative first, or was it an operational initiative the safety just kind of helped lead?
Yeah, sure, Jackson. So for us, I think at OC, I'm very blessed to be surrounded by a lot of problem solvers, which means that our business continues to be able to grow and innovate all the time. Over the last few years, we've had a really big focus in trying to be able to eliminate our high-risk tasks, and we've been successful in that. As a result, we've gotten rid of a lot of our dull, dangerous, and frankly, dirty jobs within the network. As a result of removing those, we saw our pedestrian and forklift interaction incidents start to be able to bubble up, and they became kind of top of mind at that point. And we also noticed that it wasn't a problem that was just impacting a single site or a single business unit. It was impacting multiple business units across multiple divisions. So we knew we had a pattern, and that's how it rose to the enterprise level. I do think this was an operational challenge that safety had to grab a hold of the lead of, because they were still working on being able to automate and continue to be able to innovate their business further. But with us, this fit right within our wheelhouse, like I said, to be able to reduce that technology. And so I think that we started it on the path of being able to pilot at certain locations, and then being able to trial several of the technologies that Kirk mentioned as well. We went down a similar path before we got to where we are today. But at this point, I think that our team is doing a fantastic job just trying to be able to go through the implementation of this new tech.
Perfect. So what I'm kind of hearing is that this stopped being just a safety technology question. It became an enterprise operating question. How do we reduce risk in a dynamic environment without creating more inconsistency and complexity, right? And that kind of ties us right into the next question regarding the importance of internal buy-in and enterprise approval. And Jeremy, I'll let you lead this time and ask, once this became a serious initiative internally and some of those complexities were defined, who had to be aligned before it could really move forward? Whether we kind of look at that as moving forward successfully, moving forward at scale, or kind of tying those together, I'll leave that up to you.
Sure. I think the two teams that needed to come together first were safety and operations. We really needed to be a cross-functional group that knew the problem that we were trying to be able to solve. We knew the capabilities of the solution that we were trying to be able to implement. As I mentioned before, we went down the path of the wearable technologies, the camera vision systems before. So our operations team had already had a taste of what this technology could do, but have also already seen the flaws in it. And so we really needed to be able to gain alignment between those two groups. At the same time, when the solution is coming into an operational space, you have to have confidence of what its capabilities are, but also have confidence what you can't do with that technology. If you overstate what a tech can do, it's very easy to make a mistake, and you can start to be able to lose engagement quite quickly.
Thank you. Now, Kirk, to kind of piggyback on Jeremy's response, what was your experience like recognizing those prominent stakeholders? And then to add a little bit more than that, what did you feel like they needed to know to be able to support a movement like this?
So like Jeremy, our leadership is very aligned with our overall safety vision. Our operations and safety really share that vision, and I think that was critical to the success overall of the program. The individual sites, the pilot site specifically, it was kind of a unique situation. The plant manager at the pilot site actually was the one that demanded this technology. We had tried some one-off trials and experiments at a number of facilities, a number of our divisions over years, but we finally found the right place to get that technology to take place. And so all the credit in the world goes to that plant manager that said, I want this for my facility. And so that was where we ended up having the head-to-head trial. But it was so successful that the leaders of that overall division immediately saw the benefits of it. And as I said, they were so aligned to our overall safety vision that they also adopted it. That pilot facility decided to go all in just at the end of the head-to-head trial on technologies and had their entire fleet equipped within months, certainly less than 6 months, I would say. And then that entire division, it just kind of spontaneously spread through that division and then on to the greater business unit. And then we'll see some pictures here in just a bit that really show how this gained legs, if you will, for all of Georgia Pacific. But it really was, I would like to claim it was truly a strategic effort that happened that allowed this to happen, but we got a little bit lucky with it too, kind of right place, right time, and we'll take the win. Safety, we will always rather be lucky than good if it's saving a life, and we got a little bit of both on this one.
Awesome. So since alignment within enterprise customers like yourself, it's not completely dictated by what looks best in a demo, it sounds like criteria to be met are whether or not providers and then actually yourselves as well are able to keep pace operationally, technically, and organizationally over time. So whenever you look at those criteria, I'd like to tie it together and dive into how pilot validation helps create a technology winner from an enterprise choice. What are the differences in those two? And Kirk, I'll lead with you here. Understanding that Georgia Pacific had the opportunity to actually evaluate multiple technologies head to head, what ultimately separated that strongest technological performer from the strongest enterprise choice?
Sure. Jackson, like you kind of described the question, what took it from a safety project to an operational or enterprise-wide? It did start off as a safety project. It was entirely safety driven, just looking for a technology to address it. But once we found that sweet spot with this one particular facility and were able to see that this is actually going to work, we're going to be able to get this technology off the ground, we knew immediately that we needed to go to more of a cross-functional team. We needed to bring in the rest of the company at that point beyond safety, because it'd just been ones and twos kind of up until this point. And so we were fortunate enough to already have some great relationships with other capabilities in GP. There was one particular capability, the material handling capability, or the mobile equipment capability rather, that was truly a cross-functional team made up of, well, that group's real purpose was acquisition, delivery, operations, maintenance, and disposal of all mobile equipment. But of course, that includes a lot of different capabilities, including safety, procurement, IT, legal, and so forth. So there was this ready-made center of excellence, if you will, that had these capabilities in a one-stop shop almost. So we were able to bring all of those team members together really quickly and put together a trial plan. And so initially we were looking at a lot of different technologies out there. I would say we probably boiled that down to about 3, continued to more or less anecdotally investigate those technologies, and then boiled it down to 2 to do a 3-month-long head-to-head competition, and actually put together a KT analysis of it, a Kepner-Trago analysis, where there were specific criteria laid out that would determine the winners and losers of this. And frankly, the technical KT analysis came out very similar between both of the final head-to-head products that we're looking at technologically. But the thing that really shifted this for us, again, I'm going to claim some luck rather than being good at something, but there was a time in August that we had a specific technical question, a technical issue with the other provider, and it just so happened that that other provider happened to be a European company. And if any of you have operations in Europe, you know what happens in August in Europe every year. And we just were not able to get the support that we needed for a pilot. And so that really created a lot of concern for us. If we do roll this out from a pilot site that has a couple of dozen trucks to our entire fleet that's 2,500 trucks or something like that, that was a real concern for us. And so I would say, even though technologically very similar, really excellent products both, but the scale and the scope of our project really is what determined the winner in this particular case. We did have that whole KT analysis, but the actual implementation, the delivery, the customer service is actually what led us to the final decision.
Awesome. And Jeremy, I'll ask about the same of you, but lean more into the implementation side of things. From your perspective internally, what separated a technology vendor from an implementation partner? And why was it important to kind of make that distinction?
Oh, okay. I need to be careful what I say here because I'm at a MODEX conference and there's a lot of technology vendors that I haven't had a chance to visit yet, so I'll be cautious. I think that we took a very similar path as what Georgia Pacific did, testing out several pieces of technology, landing on the right one, conducting pilots, really gaining a lot of feedback. When I talk about a technology vendor, I see them being able to sell a really good product, a very quick installation, and a very seamless customer service. But in our line of work, that's kind of the pay to play to be able to do business. I think of an implementation partner as somebody who can be able to help sell a roadmap, to be able to paint out a path forward for how we're going to go through and implement these technologies on different pieces of equipment, different sites, different business units, and also have the flexibility to be patient with us as we begin to be able to learn. Again, this is brand new technology for Owens Corning at the time, and so an implementation partner needs to be able to make sure they're flexible enough to be able to handle our needs today, but also be flexible enough to be able to handle our needs in the future. And I think that one thing that separated, our last, matrix from the rest of the group was the fact that we were open and honest with each other. It was a lot of two-way constructive criticism that went back and forth. They were open and honest with us about trucks that this wasn't going to work on. And we were open and honest with them about how the solution could actually function in our business and how we could be able to make it better. And so we need to be able to have a vendor that could be open and not just living and dying, I would say, based on the technology that they have, but also the service and support they can be able to provide.
Appreciate it. And then we kind of hit on it a little bit, but just as a follow-up to that, I kind of want to hear both of your thoughts on this. Kirk, at what point did you realize that this wasn't going to be plug and play? And how is that something that was addressed both internally and externally?
I'd say we probably first got some indications that it might not be plug and play at that initial site where they rolled out to the couple of dozen trucks. But it really became obvious that it was not plug and play once we went across the rest of the division. Those early implementations, I would say we had the good fortune of having just one or two dedicated techs that were doing the installation, so the installs were very consistent, very high quality, all the same. The zones were the same, the wires looked the same, everything was the same. It was pretty, if you will, looking at the truck with the installs. But once we started rolling out to multiple sites in multiple divisions and multiple business units, now all of a sudden that was where we started to get a little bit of variability in the install based on the technician. And so that's where it became very clear that, oh, wait, this is not an off-the-shelf plug and play. This is going to be a little bit individualized based on the installer. And so we worked very closely with Matrix to put together some install criteria so that we try to take a lot of that variability out. But that, once we did go to scale and got approval for multiple sites in multiple parts of the company, that was where it immediately became obvious. This is going to take more management than we were initially probably even thinking. And some of that was just ignorance, because remember, it started as a safety project, and I can't speak for all safety people, but I'm pretty ignorant sometimes. So it became pretty obvious that we need help. And that was where teams like that mobile equipment capability across GP, and in fact, that capability provided a project manager for the entire project. She's still managing the remaining installation, and so that really made things a lot easier from our side, and Matrix did the same thing. They've given us some dedicated resources that have tried to smooth out that variability, if you will.
Awesome. And then Jeremy, were your experiences kind of along the same lines, or is that something that you kind of look at a little differently?
We had a very similar experience to what Kirk just depicted. I think our trigger point was when we started to move into our second business unit. We started out in the first business unit where we had our highest risk facilities. Our risk assessment pointed us in the direction where we had congested sites that couldn't make other investments like dedicated pedestrian aisles and barriers to be able to protect pedestrians in that way. So we went after our highest risk sites first. The business unit that we selected, we had a lot of the same truck. And so we got very lucky being able to go after, and as Kirk mentioned, setting some installation guidelines, trying to standardize that way. As soon as we got, I would say about a handful of facilities done, everybody was high-fiving and thinking that we're going to move on to the second business unit. As soon as we did, we realized we had new trucks that we didn't know how to contend with. We also had multiple generations of trucks that we had to contend with, and some fleets that were mixed in their power sources, both electric and internal combustion. So a lot more variables were tossed at us. That was the trigger point where we realized it wasn't plug and play, and I'm very happy that we had good field service from Matrix to be able to kind of help us along through that.
Awesome. So takeaways so far have been that, this is a little bit of a different buying decision. It's less about a point feature, and it's more about the confidence that you guys are going to have in development and service as execution continues on. And then whenever you start looking at those different levels of confidence, they obviously come into play whenever you start looking at the question of how. How are we going to roll out? How are we going to install? And then how will we implement slowdown? And then thereafter, how are we going to tackle the mixed fleets, right? And so, Kirk, whenever we see things like a slowdown feature installed on a truck, it looks relatively straightforward when in reality there's a lot more depth to add to how that was achieved, rolled out, and then still supported to this day. So if you don't mind, before I pose you guys any more questions, to help the audience out, we're going to show them some of the videos from your site specifically. Alrighty, so Kirk, like I kind of mentioned, an example of slowdown like that can seem straightforward, but in reality, what did it take you guys to get a capability like that installed and then operating at a consistent level across all your environments?
Well, initially the pilot site, which that first video that you saw with the gentleman in the orange shirt, that was the pilot site. Once they saw the technology work, they were sold. And actually that's how that plant manager, he had seen these one-offs that we had used that technology previously at some other sites, and he was sold on it. And so once he got that in and saw, hey, this is going to work, this is my number one concern for my employee well-being, he was sold. And so that was an easy sales from a safety perspective. We were able to get it installed there very quickly. And so after that site, leadership for that overall division was sold. All they had to do was lay eyes on it and see, oh, wait, this really works. And so the concept, I think, is pretty easy now just based on modern automobiles. We probably all own or have at least rented a car that kind of brakes for us. Sometimes maybe when you don't want it to brake for you too, but you know how they work. So you're at least familiar with the concepts. And so that, well, why can't we do it on a forklift? That kind of became the obvious question. Why can't this same technology work in the workplace for a piece of mobile equipment? And so I think the time is right from a technological appetite in the workplace for this type of a technology. But frankly, I think Jackson showed you 3 videos. I think we've got a total of 5 or 6 that came out within about a half a year. And they were all caught. Those, by the way, are caught from process cameras in the facilities. That's not the view from the system itself. But those process cameras caught these half dozen saves. And those individuals, they may have not been fatal events, but they would have been serious injuries. The one where the gentleman was running over to the AGV with the large lift truck, I am convinced that would have been a fatality. And so once our leadership saw these 5 or 6 videos, it wasn't a question of will we do this, it's how quickly can we do this. These videos sold this enterprise-wide for us. There was no more question about whether we were going to do it. It was when are we going to get this done? When will we be completed with it? And so those pictures, those videos were just instrumental, just invaluable to the success overall of the project.
Thank you. Now, Jeremy, seeing those videos and then understanding that your rollout really includes similar features and capabilities, wanted to ask, what has your experience been like on being able to get a capability like that implemented across many sites and environments? And then how did field service and troubleshooting come into play once implementation validation, and then maybe if you can touch on a bit of your standardization, go.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned before, I'll say just right up front, this was a challenge to be able to implement. Just because we had already gone through and tested several technologies, so we already had I'll say a negative place to be able to start from. So we had a lot to prove, and I think the videos that we captured, the incidents that we showed, also prove the point. So any type of evidence that you can be able to show where the system is functioning correctly and how it's mitigating and preventing an incident, I think that's invaluable. For us, what we also notice, and maybe some of you are experiencing this as well, the last few years we've seen a pretty dynamic shift in the labor market. And what we were seeing several years ago was that we were hiring candidates with prior manufacturing experience, prior forklift driving experience, even warehousing. And now when we're hiring, we're not seeing that. We're not hiring from those markets anymore because they're not available. And what makes me nervous, other than seeing those videos, is that the next person that comes in, typically it might be their first time on a forklift. And I know that we want to be able to keep growing and developing our staff. We want to be able to make them better. I'll be honest, as a safety professional, I really don't like the first time that you drive a forklift to be working for us. I wish you did it somewhere else just to be able to get rid of some bad habits, but that's just the nature of the beast that we're dealing with right now. And I don't think it's a problem that's going to be able to go away. I think we're going to continue to be able to see it. So this is a problem that we have to be able to cope with and figure out how to be able to prevent. For us, with the standardization, I think it's important to be able to standardize where you can, where it's appropriate to be able to do so. I think if anybody's looking to be able to standardize their approach, I would focus on a specific truck. If you've got a truck that's very common in your organization, you could be able to set up some standards around it. I think more importantly, it's important to be able to standardize the configuration that you have inside of a site to make sure that the lifts that people are used to dealing with on an everyday basis are the same or as close to the same as you can be able to get. And then build your standardization up from there. If you can standardize across the whole business unit that's using similar equipment, building similar products, great if you can do that. But I also think this will guide the conversation for some of those people that are managing mobile equipment. We are hanging on to some assets that are a little bit old and obsolete, and this was also the nice justification to be able to start looking toward new lifts and trying to be able to upfit them directly from the factory.
Awesome. So this is where enterprise customers start underwriting execution risk, right? Not just the technical risk. And the question transforms into, can this actually be installed and then supported on those older lifts or a mixed fleet that you might have? And the transformation of that question points to adoption, long-term viability, and then also the lessons learned, which kind of also beg the question, Jeremy, after installation, what were some of the signs that led you to believe that the program was actually taking hold internally? And I'm sure there were times when engagement from site to site revealed flaws as well. So how did partners' capabilities kind of play into addressing those?
Yeah, great question. So I think first and foremost, we saw a leading indicator with just a behavior change. We were able to see a physical behavior change in our pedestrians as well as our drivers. And they were organically separating themselves, creating more space because they knew that if they got in each other's way, they would slow the forklifts down. And so anybody with a production incentive knows what that means. And so we were seeing everybody separating. We were seeing more heavy use of dedicated pedestrian aisles. Then we started to see our near-miss reporting going up because we were actually able to record alert events when somebody was I would say, identified inside of one of those close proximity zones. And so near misses going up was actually a good thing for us. It gave us more to work on, but it really started to be able to paint the picture of where our hotspots were inside of a facility. Where were those congestion points? Where were we really starting to be able to see repeated events of close pedestrian and forklift interactions? I think further from that, as Kirk pointed out, once we showed the technology, it really started to be able to gain traction quite quickly. I think really where it was the cherry on top was when we started to be able to develop long-term investment strategies and roadmaps for how to be able to upfit this across our entire network over a multiple-year investment strategy. And that's where we knew we had something that we could win on.
Thank you, Jeremy. Now, Kirk, one and the same. What did initial engagement look like to you? And to follow that, what kind of advice would you have for a company that might be evaluating this right now or maybe in those first stages?
Yeah, I wanted to just respond to one thing Jeremy said, because we hypothesized that people would start getting closer to each other, thinking that once they learn the ranges, they'll kind of take shortcuts. But we found exactly the same thing. They started staying further away from each other. So that was a happy unintended consequence. That was really what we wanted to start with, was just don't get near each other. So that was a very happy coincidence. As far as kind of how to get started or who do you start with, I would not overlook the operators. I would try to get operator buy-in from the start. And we did have operators participate daily in those 3-month head-to-head trials. They're the people who are going to be using the technology. They're the ones that need to be comfortable with it. They're the ones that can tell you the zones are right or they're wrong. They're too wide, they're too deep, they're not big enough. They can give you the feedback that you need. So I would not, I wouldn't exclude them from the process. In fact, I would encourage you to get them involved in the process right from the start. The thing that you might do, also Jeremy made me think of this as the rollout across the board. It would be wonderful if we could have just written a blank check to do every truck in the fleet. We were able to do that in a few divisions. Some divisions just did not have that capability, so they created more of a 2-year or 3-year rollout. But they focused on their highest risk vehicles to start with, whether that was a particular attachment they were using or a particular department that they were using. And so that's fine. We'd have rather had the blank check approach, but it just wasn't going to happen. So start with those high risk ones at those divisions or business units or facilities where that has to be the case. But start somewhere, I would say. And when you're looking for a provider, I would encourage you to look for a partner. Don't look for a vendor. Like we said, this is not an off-the-shelf solution. It's not going to the store and, okay, I'll take one of those. You need to have a partner, and you need somebody that's going to listen to how you use the equipment, how you use your mobile equipment fleet, the types of environments that you're going to be operating in, that's willing to listen to the problems that you encounter with the technology, the issues that you have with reliability, if that becomes an issue, fleet turnover, life cycle of the product, life cycle of your fleet. You need someone that's going to listen to all of that and can help you come up with the answers to that solution. Someone that has got the humility that's also going to tell you when, I don't know, but we'll figure it out. If they always say yes, it's probably not the place you want to be. Or if they always tell you an answer with a lot of confidence, that may not be the place you want to be either. You need somebody that's willing to learn with you, because this is still a new enough technology that and frankly, all of our work sites are so unique. And even within our company, in one division, we've got unique situations. There's not a cookie cutter out there. That sure make it easier for both of us. But that just doesn't exist. I wish it did, but you need a partner. You don't need a store to go to.
Alrighty, well, thank you guys both for answering my questions. Gathered that the real decision isn't just in what technology is going to work best today, but in which partner can actually help reduce that risk, meet your internal requirements, and then be dynamic enough to execute needs in the field. And that kind of stems to, the ongoing project being able to stay viable as the rollout grows over time.